This is a great Torah portion, Noah. It comes from the book of Genesis. It contains the story of Noah and the ark and the animals and the floody. And it is in very, well, really no uncertain terms. It is the flip side in similarity to another story that we read about water and a boat and a man during Yom Kippur afternoon. Remember what that story was? Jonah. And while nothing can beat the song Rise and Shine, which Rabbi Keller and I and Eric rocked out this morning with the preschool and then last Sunday with Sunday school, I actually think I got a little tendonitis in my thumb from the guitar because I'm too old to do Rise and Shine. It's very exciting. You have to see this. So how are these stories? So the story of Jonah, let's start there with the similarities. The story of Jonah is about a guy named Jonah who was sent to Nineveh. Does anyone know where Nineveh was? Up north, actually, a little bit north. More like Turkey, Syria, northern Iraq. And he's told to go there to Nineveh and tell the Ninevians that if they didn't change their ways, they were going to get schmeiced. And so he doesn't want to do this, so he goes on a boat, water, we can see the parallels. He gives the message, and in very short verses, the people change their ways, and they repent for their sins, and they are saved because Jonah told them to get it together. In this week's Parsha, and one other thing, just in case you're not buying this, I'll save this for a little bit. So the other story is this week's Parsha, which is Noah. Noah is told to build an ark, and there are very explicit terms as to how he's supposed to, the drawings are basically presented by God. By the way, both of these stories are parables. I do not believe that there was a flood that flooded the entire earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and that there was an ark. I know on National Geographic and on the Discovery Channel, they have shows about documentaries about Mount Ararat, and they found a piece of wood that they said is gopher wood, and it's thousands of years old. It's all Narishkeit. I don't buy that. I'm sorry. I used a somewhat dirty Yiddish word, meaning that's garbage. I don't. Right. Okay. So this story, however, with the ark, is God saying to Noah, the world has turned violent and chaotic, similar to what Jonah is supposed to do. Noah is not told explicitly to go tell the people to change their ways. There is a sadness in this story. It is a tragic story because it's only been 10 generations since last week's Parsha, since God created the world, that he sort of pushes the crash button. There's no crash button on the computer, but it would be the equivalent not to Control-Alt-Delete, but to going on your phone and just destroying it, destroying all of the memory. In 10 generations, the world has become so vile, so Hamas, so evil, that God says to destroy it. And so Noah doesn't go tell anyone to change their ways, but there is part of the story where he's given a long time to construct the ark in the hopes, the rabbis say in the Midrash, that people will walk by, ask him why he's building the ark, and he will then convince them to change their ways because God is a forgiving God. And just in case you didn't buy all of those comparisons, what is it that Noah sends out to check to see if the land is dry after 40 days? A dove. And what's the Hebrew word for dove? Jonah. Aha! I didn't make that up. And I make a lot of stuff up, but this I did not make up. So there are a lot of similarities. In the first story, in Noah's story, there is no redemption. People do not change their ways. The people are just as violent at the beginning of the story as they are as the flood begins, as the 40 days and 40 nights of rain begins. They do not change their ways, but in the story of Jonah, they do. They redeem themselves. They save themselves in Jonah's story. And what is it that we know? Famously, God shows Noah to say, to make a covenant that I won't destroy the world again. The rainbow. Yes, that is right. But God does not say, God says, I won't destroy the earth again by flood, but God does not say, you won't in this week's Parsha. God doesn't say anywhere in there that you won't destroy the earth, that you won't destroy yourselves at all. And so the people aren't redeemed, they aren't saved. And there are many, for those who were able to study with us, with Dr. Kehilah Kedoshah Samuelson a couple weeks ago in the Sukkah, as she said, the Torah itself is somewhat vague in terms of environmentalism, but there is very much a story of environmentalism and in societal behaviors. There is a story here, a narrative here, that teaches us that while God will not destroy the world again, and we shouldn't blame God for when bad things happen, that we very much can and are to a large extent. If you look at what we're doing to the environment, and you look at what we as human beings do to pollute it, to destroy it, and to make the environment around us something that is not only our responsibility, but if global warming does what every scientist on earth thinks it's going to do, we should not sit around one day saying, why is God doing this to us? But rather, why did we do this to ourselves? So going back to the beginning of Noah just for a moment, now we see the similarities. It is within us to choose whether or not we're going to redeem and save ourselves as a civilization, as a society, not just environmentally, not just in the air and the sea and in the land, but also in human behavior and how it is that we construct ourselves. And after many, many, many months of this incredibly vicious presidential race, where we are going to go on Tuesday, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, with a sense of shame and a sense of how did it get this way, and a sense of what did we do, not what did God do, but what did we do to put us in this position. I think we can all agree, I'm not talking about the race, but we can all agree that this is not ideal. We did not land as a country in an ideal position when we go on Tuesday to elect our next president. Why does this happen? Well, Breshit says in last week's Parsha, what? That God creates everything with words and everything is good. The only thing not good is for Adam to be alone. And so God creates Eve so that he has someone to hang out with and procreate with. But now, in Noah, the world is Hamas, is violent. It goes back to, what's the very beginning of the beginning? Tohu vavohu. The world was disordered. Does anyone know what the other word means? And chaos. No, Hamas is in this week's Parsha, and that's violence. But tohu vavohu is disordered and chaotic. So we go back to, but there weren't any people. There wasn't anything. There was just God. We go back to tohu vavohu. Judaism seems to have at its center this concept that we are teetering between order and chaos, between the good and the evil. Sort of like the Star Wars movies. No, it's true. Our bar mitzvah at 9 a.m. is going to talk about the comparison between the Noah story and Star Wars. So you'll have to come here. But we think about this, and we are presented with this theological construct between evil and good, between love and hate, between good and bad all the time in our religion. We're trying, when we read and we study all of these parshiot, to understand, to pick apart what it is that we are supposed to do so that we don't go back to tohu vavohu, or so that we don't have the idea, like God did in this week's Torah portion, to just say, I'll just destroy it all and start over again in 10 generations. It's a paradox for us. In Judaism, in traditional Judaism, there it is. In traditional Judaism, there is one antidote that keeps us on the side of good and on the side of love. What is that? One antidote. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast. Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Torah. The study of Torah, the engaging of Torah, the living of Torah keeps us away from the evil. We have Yom Kippur to clean the slate, so to speak, to do an accounting of ourselves and of our souls in order to solve this problem of good and evil. And it's very much part of what we just experienced with the high holidays, because at the beginning, we probably felt some sense, I know I do every year, amongst the anxiety of planning the services, that things won't change. We feel hopeless. At the beginning of the High Holy Days, it's very normal for us to feel like, you know what, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to right these wrongs. Those people aren't going to apologize and make things right with me. And I'm not going to go and really change that much. But I want to. It's like a New Year's resolution that never gets fulfilled. We make argument after argument after argument, both liturgically and within ourselves, to change, to become better, to take those chaotic parts of our lives and make them right. That we're going to go study more Torah, and we're going to engage more in mitzvot, and we're going to do more good acts and kind acts. But it's as if the world sort of, in its chaos, sucks us in, and we get sucked into our lives again, and we get sucked into the chaos again, and we have to wait until next Rosh Hashanah and next Yom Kippur to start promising ourselves that we can overcome these things. And we want, what do we want? We want to have healthy, happy lives. We want to do what the people of Nineveh did, to make right our wrongs and to find salvation and redemption. That's what we all want as human beings. But the whole process bogs us down because we get sucked back in to our regular lives. You cannot view these two stories, even though they're parables, in the abstract. They are part of our daily existence if we really think about it. If we really look at the world around us, on the one hand, we know it's chaotic. We know it's out of whack. We know that there is disorder. And all you have to do is turn on the news. All you have to do is read an editorial or an op-ed. Right? The world is chaotic, including our country. Right? There's this chaos. But on the same time, it's not, believe it or not, it's not a Jewish ideal to be pessimistic, because we believe very much in tikkun olam, in repairing the world. So on this Shabbat, what I would want to ask you to do, because the high holidays are over, the book is closed, I want us to think about symbolically building our own arks. What does that mean? Building for ourselves an idea or ideal or concept with which or whereby we can take one aspect, one salvific aspect of healing our world, repairing our world, of getting outside of ourselves and remembering that Noah was chosen because he was righteous in his time. If we build our own arks, and you're probably not understanding what that means, which means you're going to have to talk about it throughout the Shabbat, but it's a place of safety. It's a place of salvation. It's a place of redemption inside your life where you are thinking about how it is and where it is and when it is that you too can save the world. This is something that we've been talking about quite a bit. How can I, like Jonah, like Noah, save the world? Bring the world through the flood, through the storm, or even in the belly of a whale. How do I help bring this world to the other side so that we don't go back into chaos? It's going to require all of our attention and all of our work and all of our prayers. Build an ark for yourselves, a safe place for yourselves, a place where you can take on one aspect of that healing, one aspect of saving the world, and keep it as positive as possible, as redemptive as possible, as optimistic as possible, because I think we're getting close. I think we're getting close. It's okay to be melancholy about the election on Tuesday. It's probably healthy to be melancholy. By the way, if you're not melancholy about the election on Tuesday, I think we have a different sermon to give. I don't mean that to be funny. If you don't have a sense on Tuesday of being melancholy, of really feeling the tension that's out there, that has been created by these two people, the absolute and utter pain and divisiveness and hatred that this has caused, we've got another problem. We have something else to talk about. But the Ark, see, I won't believe for a second that we are Hamas, that we are violent in our hearts and hateful. But there have been moments that the hatefulness has been seething and oozing out of places we didn't know it existed in the last few months. And I'm very worried about that. We have to create arks, places of protection for ourselves and our families so that we can ride this wave. The only thing I know about the story of the flood and the story of Jonah is that this is not the first time in the history of history that civilizations and societies have asked these questions and have been in these positions. Just read your prophets. Read history. The world goes in and out of times of chaos and disorder to times of order and serenity. It has since the beginning of time. Let's build our own arks so that we as a community of individuals can ride this wave and do what it is that we need to do to help bring our world closer to redemption and salvation. Shabbat shalom.